Everyone, welcome to our June 17th webinar entitled Tips for Dealing with Angry Owners and Diffusing Explosive Situations. My name is Alina Gilbert. I will be presenting today, and I know we are all looking forward to some ideas and how to deal with this stuff. But before we get there, let's do some housekeeping, and you guys can enjoy Angry Birds. The theme throughout this presentation is angry, right? Everyone's angry. So we have Angry Birds. Anyhow, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you all being here. If you have not done one of these webinars before, the bulk of your screen should be the PowerPoint with these Angry Birds, and kind of off to the left is the presenter, me, hi. To the right of the screen, you will see a little icon that says chat. So if you have questions as I'm going through things, just go ahead and type them, click on the chat icon, type them in. I'm saving questions for the end, like I always do, for two reasons. One is to make sure we have time to go through all the materials. And the second being that a lot of times your question gets answered kind of later on in the presentation. So sometimes, it's already answered. We don't need to go over it again. If you are having any problems with your video, with your audio, on the bottom of the screen, you should see a little button that says audio or video problems. Click on that. It's going to take you through a few steps and hopefully get the problem resolved for you. This class does give you one CMCA credit. For those of you who need it, it gets automatically emailed to you, typically within 24 to 48 hours or so. You should get an email with the certificate. Here's the thing. Make sure you save the picture of the certificate in your computer, because after 30 days, it just poof, disappears, and then you're going to be angry. So I don't know why it does that. It's something to do with the programming, but ultimately just make sure you save the certificate so you can pull it up later and be able to use it. Otherwise, it's going to be gone. Now, let's see. As a reminder, we are recording today, and this will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you really want to watch it again, or you want to refer someone to watch it, it will be on our YouTube channel. You give it about 48 hours or so before it's up there, hopefully by Friday. But otherwise, once it's up, you can watch it over and over and over again, or tell people to watch it. And we just cannot give credit to somebody for watching it through YouTube like you're going to get credit today. At the end of the webinar, last thing, there will be a little pop-up asking you for some feedback and your thoughts about the presentation today. If you have time and you have the inclination, we really appreciate whatever feedback you have for us. Even if you want to tell me, Alina, you suck today, it's still feedback, and we use it to try and improve future presentations. So, we appreciate anything you can provide us to help us improve in the future. Okay, enough of that. Let's move on. All right, let's talk about some basic truths. I always like to start very, very broad, but I think it is super important to keep all of this in mind, even though I think inherently we know this is the case, but sometimes we just forget. But one is, you're not going to make everyone happy all of the time, right? It's not possible, not going to happen, so don't expect it to happen. Conflict will always exist. Where there is two or more people, there will be conflict at some point. Sometimes there's conflict when it's just one person. I always fight with myself. Some owners, they're just not going to be happy no matter what you do. And I'm sure you have all experienced this many times. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, they're still not happy. So that's just the way it is, and we got to accept it sometimes. Now, the next couple are, I think, again, inherently we know it, but it's very, very difficult to accept it. And that is, the loudest voice is not always the correct voice, and it is not always the opinion of the majority. Okay, so we all know that when there's something contentious going on and we're going to a meeting and people are yelling and screaming at the board, generally speaking, that is nowhere near a majority of all the owners, right? It is a select few homeowners, but they're so loud, it makes it seem like it's everybody. And the way they talk about it, they make it seem that it's everybody. Well, the owners don't want you to do this, and you would be doing this to hurt the owners. And, they make it sound like it's everybody. But it is always imperative that we keep in mind that it's not everybody, and it's not even a majority. You guys, you take attendance, you have sign-in sheets, you know how many homes are represented. And so make sure you remember that. And what you hear, take that with a grain of salt, right? And the other thing that I think is even harder to remember is that it's not personal, right? It feels personal because they're a lot of times calling us names, calling us incompetent, accusing us of stealing money from the association, right? But they'd be doing that regardless of who's sitting in that chair, right? Whether I'm there as the attorney, or one of my partners is there as the attorney, or you're there as the manager, or someone else is there as the manager, they're going to be doing it no matter what. They're angry. And again, they don't really know you as a person. They're not angry at you as a person. They're angry with a situation, and you're the one who's in the seat that they get to yell at. Right? So always remember that. And it's, like I said, it's so hard. And finally, there's no easy answers. A lot of times there is not necessarily a solution to the problem. And these are all things we have to remember as we go through these situations with very upset homeowners, angry owners, yelling and screaming homeowners. There's only so much you can do. So the next part of the presentation, I really want to talk about why owners get angry. And I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, just because they're stupid. Yeah. Well, anyway, but so I want to talk about specific reasons why homeowners get angry. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. And after we talk about the various reasons, I want to talk about some possible solutions or some steps that associations can take to address each of these reasons. So the reasons are going to be no transparency, there's a perception of wrongdoing, they receive a violation letter, misconception of roles, and what else? I'm sure you will all think of a lot of things that I'm not thinking of or that aren't on the slides. And there's an infinite list, really. So let's talk about transparency first. What's the issue with transparency? And I want you to always keep in mind, as I'm talking about these things, sometimes this is truly what's going on in an association, no resources for information. Sometimes there are associations that do not provide resources. Other times it's going to be the owner's perception that there are no resources for information. However, regardless of whether it is a reality or whether it is a perception, it is the homeowner's reality, because that's how they perceive it. And so when we talk about how do we solve this, a lot of times we'll say, well, just pay attention. You need to know where you can go for information. But again, that doesn't solve the problem, right? So how do we get this in front of their faces might be the real question here. So with no transparency, either the reality or the perception is I don't have any resources where I can go and ask questions and get information about what the association's doing, what we're paying for. That is kind of an underlying theme with the transparency. The other one is I've called and emailed 25 times. I haven't gotten a response. Well, perhaps they called and emailed over the course of 5 minutes, 1 hour ago, and they still haven't gotten a response. So sometimes the expectations are unrealistic, but also we have to acknowledge that there are times when homeowners call where they're not getting a response in a reasonable time frame. A lot of times owners are not notified of significant events or changes in the community. Or perceived that way. So an example is I have seen communities that change management where the homeowners don't even know, they're not being told that management is now with management company X instead of management company Y. And they still send payments to the old management company because they haven't been notified. That's a problem, right? If I'm a homeowner and I'm doing that and my check gets returned from the old management company, I'll be a little upset as well, because why didn't somebody tell me we're changing management companies? However, somebody may have told me and I just wasn't paying attention, or I didn't open the email that was sent to me, or I didn't open the letter. Regardless, I'm still perceiving that as no transparency. You didn't tell me something, right? Owners receive ballots to vote on something they had no idea was even happening. I can give you a great example here. Thank God it doesn't happen that often, but I have seen, I had an association once where the board was drafting amended and restated governing documents. So they were rewriting all their governing documents. And for some reason, nobody ever told the homeowners they were doing this. They never had a meeting of the homeowners. They never sent out drafts to the homeowners. The only thing they did was, once the board was happy with the documents, they sent out the mail ballot packet. Homeowners had no clue this was going on. I thought there was going to be a riot. I really did when this happened. They ended up, obviously it didn't get approved. They ended up calling a meeting afterwards, and the homeowners were livid. And again, understandably so. It's like you don't want to spring something this big on the homeowner saying, here it is, use it or lose it. You want to make sure there's adequate transparency and communications. During meetings, the board makes decisions without a discussion. What am I talking about here? A lot of boards hold what we call working sessions, right? And working sessions are generally they're meetings, they're unofficial meetings of the board during which they discuss stuff, and they don't make a formal decision, but they ultimately come to a consensus as to what they want the decision to be. So when they go into their regular board meeting, the one that homeowners can attend, and if homeowners do attend, they are going to make the decision without having a meaningful discussion. So if the vote is on which landscaping company they want to contract with, and they've already had the discussion, then the way it looks says, okay, next item on the agenda is voting on the landscaping company. Somebody moves. I move we approve the bid from ABC Landscaping. Someone seconds. All in favor. Boom, it's done. Of course, there is the part where you have to give homeowners the opportunity to comment, but ultimately the board isn't having a discussion. So as an audience member, it is perceived that the decision's already been made. And that's not an incorrect perception. So that means, to me as a homeowner, you've talked about this, even though we're supposed to have open meetings, you've talked about this without any homeowners there, and you've made the decision. So now I, as the homeowner, I don't get the benefit of hearing that discussion, which I'm entitled to hear. So that could breed distrust, and that is something where homeowners see it as you're not being transparent. Last one. I asked for documents, they weren't being produced. I'll be honest with you, a lot of times that is because homeowners ask for documents that they're not entitled to, right? But sometimes that's not the case. And regardless, again, it's still their perception, and that makes them angry. So now that we've talked about why the no transparency, perception exists, let's talk about what we could do perhaps to help alleviate at least some of those concerns. All right, so more information posted on the website. I know associations, some associations have more in-depth websites than others. I know if you are an association that's working with a professional management company, you're going to have a better website usually than if you are like a self-managed association. But the more information associations can put on their websites, the better. And ultimately, the easier it is to find this information, the better. not all our homeowners are savvy on, how to use websites, especially if you are managing or sitting on the board of a community with, older individuals who perhaps are not as fluent with, technology. So the easier we make it and the more information we put on there, the better the chances that someone's going to see it, they're going to read it, and then they're not going to necessarily think you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes because they've seen the information. Newsletters. A lot of you do newsletters. Not everyone does newsletters. How often do you do newsletters? Quarterly, twice a year, once a year. Maybe do them more often than that. Maybe you make them shorter, but once a month. Who knows? But make sure you put everything that's going on in the community in that newsletter. Here's some things the board is working on in case you weren't able to attend the meeting. Here's where you can get the meeting minutes if you want to look. I mean, over communicate with your homeowners, because when we think we're doing, providing enough communication, chances are we're not. At least not as far as the homeowners are concerned. So communicate far more than you think is necessary. Email blasts and US mailings as to significant events coming up in the community. Hey, FYI, effective July 1st, we're going to have a new management company taking care of this community. Here's the name, here's our contact person, here's the phone number and address, here's where you're going to be sending all your payments. I mean, over communicate that. Hey, the board is working on rewriting the governing documents. Our documents are 30 years old. We think it's time. You will get drafts, for your feedback. We look forward to discussing these with you. I mean, whatever you want to do it, but communicate, tell people what's going on. We're looking at an elevator remodeling project. Our elevators are old. They're not up to code. This is what it's going to look like. We're not exactly sure yet. The timing, we're not exactly sure the contractor, but this is something the board isn't looking into at this time. All these types of things, and I'm talking, this all comes from various experiences that I've had working with associations, where had they done these kinds of blasts and informational, meetings or posting things on the website, I think they would have avoided a lot of homeowner conflict. Try to discuss everything during open board meetings. Again, what I'm saying is working sessions should be few and far between. I know boards love them, but honestly, I think they work against the boards when it comes to homeowner trust. Okay. And ensure you got a good document production process in place. All associations are required to have a document inspection policy. It's one of the 9 required. So you should have one and you should be following it to a T. If you're not sure what something means, talk to your attorneys, because there are penalties in Kiowa now when it comes to associations who don't produce timely or fail to produce. There's actual monetary fines that can be imposed against you by a court. So you don't want to put an association in that place. So make sure you're following that. All right, let's do the next one. Perception of wrongdoing. And again, we said most of this is going to be perception. The perception may be right, but it may be wrong. But regardless, it is the homeowner's reality. So you have to make sure not only that you're communicating the actual message, you need to make sure that the homeowners understand the message you're trying to communicate. If what you're doing isn't working, you might want to try something different. What triggers a perception of wrongdoing? Well, nothing triggers it faster than an assessment increase, right? Why are you raising assessments by $20? How dare you? It's usually not even the issue whether or not someone can pay. A lot of times it's just the principle. How dare you raise assessments? What are you doing with all this money? You're wasting it. You're stealing it. You're whatever. Perception that the property is not being maintained. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but the perception that it's not being maintained gets owners very angry. nuisance is not being enforced. So that's a fairly recent type of a situation because, as you know, we can't really enforce nuisance violations anymore because as soon as they stop doing what they're doing, they've cured it. And the only thing we're ever going to be able to do is send them courtesy letters. So associations can't enforce these types of violations anymore. But homeowners don't know that. They don't know what the law says. They just perceive it as, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, board. You're not enforcing the covenants. The perception that you're letting other owners do things that they're not allowed to do, right? Other owners are doing it. You're letting other people do it. And of course, back to the money, I know someone who can do it cheaper. How many times have you heard that? Yeah, my cousin Joe Bob, he's a contractor and he could replace all our exterior stairwells for half the price. Well, could he? Would it be the same type of work product? There's always that perception that you're not hiring the right contractors. Again, a lot of it stems to the fact that our assessments are going up and the perception that they're going up because you're not properly managing the money association. These homeowners don't typically look into what it takes to run the community. Even though they have a budget, it's very easy for them to shoot things down saying, I know someone who can do it cheaper. Where in reality, no, you're not going to find someone who can do it cheaper, at least not for the level of quality we need. So, but this is another thing that upsets people. So you're going to see this theme: communicate, over-communicate, over-communicate. Tell homeowners what's going on, just like we talked about before. A couple of new options is request owner feedback. Get them involved. A lot of times, if a homeowner feels like they have a voice and they have a say, they're going to feel better. Even if they don't like the decision, they feel better about it knowing they were somehow involved. So how do they get involved? By providing feedback. What about creating committees? That's one of my favorite things to do with certain projects because it really helps the board. Let's say we are looking at an elevator modernization project, right? No matter what you do, you're going to have homeowners who are upset with you because it's going to cost money. It probably means they won't be able to use the elevator at some point, right? So what better way to do this than to create a committee of homeowners to investigate it? Let them talk to contractors. Let them get information about what the options are for fixing or upgrading or modernizing our elevators. Let them bring it to the board. The board's still going to make the decision, but the homeowners, they provide us with information. So that's less work for the board. And then the homeowners feel empowered, and then they're going to support most likely what the board decides to do. Or if the board has questions, then the committee can go look at that and they can provide us with the information. You're really shifting this work of having to investigate everything to a group of homeowners who want to do it. And it saves the board time. And it also makes everything seem more legit because now it's not just the board. We got a group of homeowners who are saying this is what we're recommending, right? So create committees. It is very important. And owner education. So you all know you have to provide homeowner education at least once per year. There's no specific method you have to use. It could be, an article in the newsletter. It could be someone coming to, like a CPA coming to your meeting talking about association taxes, or the insurance person or the attorney. I mean, as long as you designate it as the owner education component. But why not offer it more often than that? If you can educate your homeowners on these processes, you are going to see, far less angry people because they're going to understand what the process is. And there's going to be less unknowns in their brain for them to fill in the blanks. Anytime you let people fill in the blanks, it's not going to be in a positive way. That's just the way humans are. There's been a lot of research on that. We're not going to get into psychology, but it's called the negativity bias. That's what the psychologists and psychiatrists call it. Basically, we're always looking for the negative. So next, received a violation letter. I know that, that's a pain. I'm being targeted. You're discrimination, right? That's the first thing you hear. You're discriminating against me. We don't know anything about this owner, and they're assuming we're discriminating against them for whatever reason. Oh, and my neighbors got the same violation, and you didn't send them a letter, and by the way, you suck. You ever been in that kind of a situation? Of course you have. So I'm not saying don't send violation letters. You've got to send the violation letters when people are violating. Best thing you can do, you can ensure that the rules and covenants are easily accessible. You can send reminders, whether it's letters, email blasts of, hey, summer's coming up. Remember, in order to use the pool, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Remember, don't plant anything without getting approval, blah, blah, blah. Just reminders. And the most important thing, I think, is please remember that this is personal to the owners no matter what. And I'm going to tell you a personal story because this hit it home for me. I do this all the time, right? I'm an attorney. I work in the HOAs. I deal with enforcement letters all the time. I live in an HOA. I know. Don't say anything. I live in an HOA, a big HOA. 2 or 3 years ago, I got a violation letter from the association telling me I had to paint my house. And let me tell you, my gut reaction was I was pissed off, even though I know exactly how all this stuff works. But somebody was telling me that my house didn't look good. That was personal to me. And I looked at it, I'm like, I don't see it. I really didn't. And then we realized what they were talking about was just like some fading of the paint on the side of a house. You really had to look for it. But, and I was like, what the heck? So I called the manager. Manager said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. This person is overzealous. Do you want me to get this off, off your home? And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to be that person who's going to say I'm not in violation. If they perceive it as being a violation, I'm going to go ahead and repaint the house. But I just wanted you to know that it's not going to happen right now. It's going to happen, whenever. But the fact that it hit me so hard as a homeowner, like everything I know as an attorney went out the window. I was offended that I got this. And so I can only imagine how it would feel to someone who's a homeowner who doesn't know how all of this works, because they're getting something in the mail that's saying, you suck, your property looks bad, so you need to fix it, or you're doing something wrong, you better fix it. It's personal, and we always have to remember that. Most of the time, they don't even know they're in violation. So keep that in mind. And, that may impact on how you respond to these people and how you deal with it. And again, don't stop enforcement if they're in violation. Keep going with the enforcement policy. But just understand why people get so riled up when they receive these violation letters. Misconception of roles. This, I think, is really big. And here's what I mean by it. How many community managers who are on this webinar, how many of you have gotten accused of doing things that are wrong that really had nothing to do with you, was something that the board decided to do? How dare you raise assessments, manager? I'm going to sue you, management company, because you raised assessments. I'm going to sue you, management company, because you denied my exterior improvement. Homeowners perceive the community managers as those are the ones who make the decisions, because the letters come from community managers, right? The warnings come from the managers, the management companies. So of course, homeowners, not knowing any better, perceive it's the manager who's doing all of this to me, right? They don't know they don't know who really makes the decisions. They perceive contractors as what? They perceive contractors as their contractors. Well, I pay into the HOA, therefore anything that's the HOA's is mine. This is my contractor. I can go and I can talk to them. I can yell at them and tell them they're doing a bad job. Attorneys, I'm entitled to talk to the HOA attorney anytime I want because I am paying for them to do their job. Therefore, they are my attorney. It happens all the time. And so that's a very big misconception of the roles here. What is the board's role? Well, a lot of homeowners perceive the boards as basically, well, in a way you do serve the homeowners, but they perceive the boards as being bound by the homeowners' decisions. In other words, the homeowners get the final say on everything. The board just brings it to them, and they're the ones who approve it all. They don't understand that the board is an elected body, that this is a corporation. We're governed with corporate laws where the board makes the decision. The board's exposed to liability, not the homeowners. And so the homeowners believe their role then is to make the decisions. How dare you, adopt this rule that without going to the homeowners? How dare you raise assessments without talking to the homeowners? Who approved this contractor being hired? The homeowners didn't approve it. So we see this all the time. And I suspect as you're listening to me, you're going, oh yeah, that's exactly what's happening, in my community. So what are the roles? First of all, do we understand our roles? I think most of us do. Can we explain our roles to the homeowners? Most of us can, I think, but are they going to listen to us? I don't know. So how do we address that? I mean, the best, most effective way to address these things is through education. It is a recurring theme here. We keep talking about owner education. We got to educate the homeowners. Now, I understand we can offer them a lot of educational opportunities. We can do classes, we can do literature, we can have, the attorney attend the annual meeting and talk about things. I get that. And not all your homeowners are going to show up to that. And the ones who do show up may not even listen, but some will. Some homeowners will. They'll read it, they'll listen to it, they'll attend, because they do really want to understand. And that's a start. Because if you've got a few homeowners who start understanding, then perhaps they can help the board management rein in the homeowners that don't understand. And so you got to start somewhere. And the more educational opportunities associations can provide for their homeowners, the better off they're going to be in the future. I know boards right now, they're like, we have to provide education once a year. Oh my God, that's so much. But I would encourage boards and community managers to think about it from a purely different perspective, which is we want our lives to be easier. And the best way to make our lives easier is to have homeowners who really understand what's going on and what we can and can't do. And if we can get that, our lives will be easier. And so I will always push, as many attorneys do, for homeowner education. Our boards need to be educated. Our owners need to be educated, because the more educated they are, the less pushback and the less anger you're going to encounter, because they are going to understand what is going on. So it's so important. Let's take a comedic break here. How many of you have thought that? Stupidity management classes. I wish they had those. All right, we'll move on. So now this kind of next part of the presentation, I want to talk about angry owners at meetings, angry owners on the phone, because that's kind of when you come face to face with that. And it's sometimes hard. Like, it's one thing to talk about, well, here's all the steps an association should take so that homeowners have more information and more knowledge, versus how do you handle an actual anger outburst at a meeting or on the phone. So I'm going to talk about board meetings and then owner meetings, like, your annual meetings. But really, I think the theme is going to be very, very similar on both of these. So with board meetings, it is so important that we remember the purpose of this meeting. The purpose of the board meeting is to conduct corporate business. This is not a meeting of homeowners. This is a board meeting so that the board can make decisions for the corporation and the corporation can continue to function. So yes, there are times when homeowners must be allowed to speak. If you have an open forum, certainly. And, and you can run it however you want. Before the board takes a vote on anything, we have to allow homeowners to speak. And it's a reasonable number on both sides of the issue, is what Kiowa says. Reasonable number on both sides of the issue, which means it's not everyone. We don't have to allow everyone to speak. If the board is talking about something that's kind of contentious, and we got 40 homeowners showing up, and there's 20 on one side and 20 on the other, imagine how long it would take to let them all talk, right? You'd be there all night. So you can definitely carve out, we're going to let 2 people on each side talk. That's perfectly fine. And you can set time limits. We're going to give 2 minutes per person. Have your time clock. As soon as it dings, cut them off. We have to do that, or people are going to keep talking and talking. Then you're going to have people piping in and interrupting, saying, but wait, I have another question. Sorry, this is a board meeting. We need to conduct board business. Anyone who didn't get to ask a question or state their opinion, please email. Here's the email address. Email it. We will review all your comments. Sorry, we can't get to everyone, but we need to keep this for a reasonable time limit. So that kind of takes us to the conduct of meetings policy. How many of you, everyone has to have one. It's one of the 9 required policies. So all of you listening to me right now, how many of you read your conduct of meeting policy in the last week? I would say I can't see you if you raise your hands, but it's a question you should ask yourself. How many of you know what your conduct of meetings policy says? How many of you know that you have a conduct of meetings policy? There's a reason it's required by Colorado law, and that is because it's extremely, extremely helpful if you have it and you abide by it. This is the policy that really sets forth conduct that will and will not be tolerated during a meeting and how the meetings will be run. It should apply to both your board meetings and your homeowner meetings. And you need to follow it. So what does that mean? Okay, so let's say conduct of meetings policy says, which a lot of them do, everyone's going to speak to everyone else with a respectful tone, no yelling, no swearing. Okay, you have a homeowner in the audience who's really upset and they start yelling and screaming. What does the policy then say? If you violate this, first you'll get a warning. Okay, sir, madam, whatever. You're violating the policy. We're not yelling here. We're not screaming. We're not throwing profanities out. Please stop. If you do it again, what does the policy say? We ask you to leave. Okay, leave. Now, some people may put up a fuss about leaving. In most cases, I think they do eventually leave when they're told to leave. But again, read the policy and see what it says about how we handle non-compliant behavior, regardless if it's a homeowner or a board member. If it's a board member being difficult, they can also be asked to leave if the policy says that's what we do. And finally, stick to the agenda. I've been to a lot of meetings, and I know a lot of times there's homeowners there and they have a lot they want to say, and it's open forum, and the board listens, and then it goes off on tangents, and an hour later we haven't even gotten to item 1 of the agenda. It's important to stick to the agenda. The board has a fiduciary duty to manage the corporation and to run the corporation. And technically, you're not doing that if you're allowing owners to take control over board meetings. And so that exposes you also to liability, boards. And it's very important that you create the type of environment where homeowners are welcome to attend, welcome to listen, you're welcome to talk when you're allowed to talk, when you're recognized, you're following the time limits, you're being respectful. Anything over and above that, you are now interfering with the board's ability to conduct business, and we will treat you the way that our policy says what we're going to do. We're going to ask you to leave if you don't stop. Easier said than done, I know. But let's go to homeowner meetings, membership meetings, because I have some more stuff here that I want to talk about that will also apply to our board meetings. Okay, so this is the same. We're going to follow the conduct of meetings policy, right? I recommend, and this is for all meetings, that you announce at the beginning of every meeting that, hey, we have a conduct of meetings policy, have copies available for homeowners who want it or board members who want it. We have a conduct of meetings policy. We will be following this to a T. We have copies if you want to grab one, but we are going to start following these. And if somebody doesn't comply, we're going to follow the steps set forth in the policy. Be serious. Don't tell them you're going to do it and then not do it. Then nobody's going to believe you later on. You got to do it. Which brings me to the next point, which is who's running your meetings. A lot of times what I see is it's either the board president or they ask the community manager to run the meetings. That's not always the best case scenario. You have to think strategically about these things. If you're having a contentious meeting, or you know you're going to have some angry people show up, you need to have someone running the meeting who has a very strong personality. You don't want someone, just lack of a better word, who's very nice. You don't want someone who's soft-spoken. There's time for those types of folks to run meetings, and there's also time for other types of folks to run meetings. So any meetings that you perceive that might be problematic, you're going to have angry people who aren't going to listen, who aren't going to follow our conduct of meetings policy. Think about who you want to run the meeting. Maybe it's the vice president, maybe it's the secretary, maybe it's a member at large. It doesn't matter. Maybe you want the attorneys to come and run the meeting. But I will tell you one thing, not all attorneys can run meetings like that. There are still soft-spoken attorneys out there. There are attorneys who aren't going to put their foot down. So don't assume just because someone's an attorney that they're going to be the right individual to run your meetings. So this is something that requires some strategic planning, I think, when you know you're going to have angry people. Figure out who on the board has the best capability. Figure out if maybe it's the community manager. Some managers are amazing at this. Maybe it's nobody that we know, and maybe we need to consider a parliamentarian. So here's another story. I love telling stories. We had an attorney who worked for us probably at least 15 years ago. She was a parliamentarian, and we sent her to every horrible meeting that existed that she had time to go to. And those meetings went off without a hitch because parliamentarians are amazing at dealing with these types of situations. And they do it in a way where the pissed off people don't even realize that they're being, I don't want to say manipulated, but that they're being controlled. And parliamentarians are a great idea. If you're thinking about that, I would highly recommend at least trying it once in your contentious meetings to see how you like it. I don't really know how much they cost, to be honest with you. And I couldn't give you a referral, but I know if you do a Google search for parliamentarian, you probably find one. So think about that. Think about having legal counsel attend, as long as you make sure it's the kind of attorney who can put their foot down, who can be the jerk if they need to be and shut people down, and there's a lot of attorneys who can do that, and not all. So make sure, that's an option. Have the attorney be there. If this is a continuous problem for your community, consider more virtual meetings. A lot of communities are doing virtual meetings now, not everyone, but consider them because the homeowners that want to disrupt are going to be super angry that you're holding virtual meetings because we're going to be able to shut them down by muting them or kicking them out of the meeting. And they're going to be really upset. Those are the ones who are going to be upset with virtual meetings. So consider more virtual meetings. Okay. I have had associations retain off-duty police officers to keep the peace. So if you're telling someone they have to leave and they don't leave, we can have someone who can escort them out. Maybe it's on-duty police officers. I see that quite a bit when we've got really angry, possibly violent owners and in-person meetings. Unfortunately, that's the reality. So don't be shy to ask for an off-duty or an on-duty police officer to come to the board meeting. I'm seeing more and more of them. If you don't have anyone there to keep the peace and you're telling someone they got to leave and they're not leaving, I would say adjourn the meeting. Because, well, safety, first of all, it should be the most important thing. For everybody. If we need to adjourn the meeting and we need to call it again and we do it as a virtual meeting, fine. If that's the way people are going to behave, they don't deserve to have in-person meetings. So we're going to do virtual meetings. So keep all of that in mind. And obviously, I know the purpose of this class is talk about diffusing situations. But as I said before, some people are going to be angry no matter what. And so diffusing the situation, especially when there's a mob mentality in a in-person meeting with pissed off homeowners, is going to be very, very difficult. So consider, adjourning the meeting, ending it, and then maybe reconvening it virtually. All right. Next. All right. Angry owners on the phone. By the way, this meme is my new probably favorite meme. It's hilarious. Okay. So community managers, you're the ones who get the brunt of this. You answer your phone and the first thing you hear is, why you blankety blank, blank, blank. How dare you blankety blank, blank, whatever. Fill in the words yourselves, right? So you're stuck on the phone with this person. What are you going to do? How do you handle these types of situations? So a lot of this stuff that I'm going to talk about is stuff that's counterintuitive for us as humans, because we do tend to take things personally. If someone's yelling at us and calling us all sorts of bad words, we take that personally. But let them vent. Don't interrupt them. Let them go off. Let them say whatever it is they want to say. Let them get it out of their system. A lot of situations are people wanting to be heard. Maybe they may not expect you to fix things, but they want to be able to say their thing. They want to be able to yell at somebody, express their frustration. Let them do it. Okay? Unless they're threatening you like physically or something, then obviously that's a whole different story. But if they're just yelling and blowing off steam and being angry, let them do it. When you talk to them, keep your voice calm and steady. Be nice if you can. It's not personal. Like I said before, this is not personal. They're pissed off at the situation. There might be things going on in their lives that we don't know about. Of course there are. It feels personal to us when we're on the phone. I admit it. But you got to keep in the back of your mind, this is not about you. This is about them and their situation. And if we take the tone they're taking, it's just going to escalate. And the goal is to de-escalate the conflict here. Repeat what they said, obviously, maybe in a shorter version, so they know that they've been heard. That's important. So what I hear you saying is that you're really upset because assessments are going up. Is that right? Okay. Acknowledge their frustration. If I were in your shoes, I'd be upset too. I know that right now money is difficult and prices keep increasing. I get it. It's hard. Apologize, even though it's not your fault. A lot of folks have a problem with that. They're like, I'm not apologizing. I didn't do anything wrong. That's not the point. You're just apologizing that they feel the way they do. I'm sorry that you are so frustrated. I'm sorry that this is happening. I get it. That's all. And then, to the extent possible, provide some realistic steps to address the situation. They may not like the steps, but give them some options. Look, I know the assessment increase is going to be difficult for you. Why don't you come to the next board meeting? Let's talk. You can talk to the board, see what the board thinks, see, what options there are. Or, if you can't make the payment on the 1st of the month because you don't get paid till the 15th, we have a 30-day grace period. So you're not going to get, dinged unless you don't make it by the 30th day. So you should be okay. Whatever it is, however it is, you can help them. And then ultimately, something that I think most of us never do is following it up with an email. Hey, I just wanted to follow up on our conversation. I still think you should come to a board meeting if you're struggling with this. I'm sorry you're going through this. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to assist you. Let them think you're on their side. I mean, ultimately, you're on the association side, and it benefits the association to not have angry homeowners. So in a roundabout way, you are on their side, right? So I want to tell you another story. This is about our office and a collector that we have in our office. And you know what a collector does, right? They make the outbound calls in our collections department, telling people they have to pay. And you might imagine that would upset people, right? I mean, usually you're not going to get nice, happy people on the phone when you call them telling them they got to pay. One of our collectors is so good at his job that not only does he get people to pay, but they actually come into the office afterwards and bring him gifts. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. They bring him gifts because they feel he was an advocate for them. He was so polite. He was so respectful. He helped them with different options. He talked to them and explained things to them. And they felt like even though he was there taking money from them, that he was really their advocate. And that is like the best thing you can do when you have an angry person on the other side, on the phone or in a meeting. They gotta feel like, look, I'm not against you here. I want to help you. And it works. It works. So with that in mind, I just saw a comment, Alina the psychologist. If only. Another great meme right here for you. And I think we are ready for some questions. I'm going to try and start from the bottom here. So 1 second, and I'll get us to the next slide. Okay. I also keep in mind that there are some owners I can do no wrong with. That is a great point. That is a very, very good point. And yeah, so that's true. You're going to have homeowners who think you walk on water and talk to God, and that's great. Sorry, just trying to get. All right. Question for Q&A session. Can you explain more about why we can't enforce against nuisances? We're getting asked to enforce against dogs off leash and people smoking on their patio porches, back porches. We are not a no smoking community. Just really quick, because we do enforcement classes that talk about this, and it's not a quick thing, but let's talk about the barking dog. So a barking dog is a nuisance. Right now, the law says it has very specific steps an association must take with respect to enforcement. And in the past, so you have a barking dog, eventually the dog goes in the house and stops barking. That cures the violation. They fixed it. The dog stopped barking. Even if it's for only 20 minutes, they've stopped barking. So the violation has been cured. In the past, when the dog started barking again, we would send them a violation saying, hey, this is a repeat offense, and you better stop or we're going to go after you. We're not allowed to do repeat offenses anymore. So every time the violation is cured, we're done. So next time it starts again, even if it's in 20 minutes, the only thing we can do is send them another courtesy letter in accordance with our policy, because we're not allowed to do anything different with repeat offenders or repeat violations. So unfortunately, that really does apply to most of our nuisance violations. Creating a committee, doesn't that create an open meeting burden? Are there options? So open meeting burden, I mean, board meetings have to be open, committee meetings have to be open. I think I might be missing the question. So there's always an open meeting requirement for any meeting of the board or of the committees. So the committee is not going to be in any different position than the board, to the extent the committee, does research and talks to people and stuff. That's not part of the meeting, right? So that's not subject to the open meeting portion. But anytime they meet together to discuss things, that part is open to homeowners. So I'm not sure if I answered it. Hopefully I did. Can you provide education through an email blast, or does it have to be at a meeting? You can provide an email blast where you cut and paste an article, say, from our website. The key with the education piece is you need to tell homeowners, hey, this is your annual education component, so that it is specifically designated as the education component. I am getting angry owners over their assessment account, of course, incurring late fees. We switched over to a new online payment system in January, and many emails were sent to owners letting them know their online payment registry and they were using would be void, and they would need to sign up for the new option to make payments. The problem is, I think they only received this communication by email and not through regular mail. Does a notification like this require postal mail as well as an email? Not necessarily. The law doesn't really speak to those types of notifications. My recommendation personally is to send it out in as many ways as you can. Do it an email blast, send it by snail mail, do both, because, at least in Colorado, we have a legal presumption of receipt. When you put something in the US mailbox, it's presumed received by the person it's addressed to. So at least from a legal perspective, you would then be able to say, I mailed it, therefore they should have received it. What time is it? All right. How do we know if we have one or where to locate it? Oh, the policy. The policies are all part of your governing documents, so they should be on the website. They should be in the association's corporate records, along with their declaration and bylaws and articles of incorporation, their rules. It should all be in there together. Oh, let's see. Let's see. Owners carried their conflict that started at the pool to the Zoom chat in a special board meeting where the board talked about incidents happening at the pool. The board asked that I turn off the Zoom chat for future virtual meetings. Would that be best practice? If it's a board meeting, I would absolutely turn off Zoom chat. And I would allow homeowners to speak by unmuting them whenever they are allowed to speak, as opposed to letting them just type stuff in there all the time. Oops, sorry. All right. We just readdressed our conduct and ethics of meetings policy, and our productivity increased massively. Wonderful. That's great. That is really good to hear. So if your conduct of meetings policy isn't working for your community, maybe it's time to update it and review it and see what's working, what's not. In regards to running the meeting, what if the angry, unreasonable, even hostile person running the meeting is the board president? Because the bylaws state it is the board president who runs the meeting. So if you've got a problem board member, remember one thing: if they're the president, the board can remove them as president. Offices are elected and removed by the remaining board members. So I would tell the board, get him off as president, make him a member at large, remove him from office, have someone else be president. These are relatively easy things to fix. Can we suspend, last question, HOA rights when angry owners don't comply, like pool usage? That is going to depend on your governing documents. There has to be a right in there to suspend use of facilities And usually it has to be a violation that lasts at least 30 days though. So I'm not sure. I couldn't answer that question for you. It's going to depend on your documents. All right. I think that's all we have time for. It's 1 o'clock. I know there's a whole bunch more questions. Feel free to email. Let me see here. 1 second. All right, there you go. There's my email address and an angry bird. Feel free to email me with questions. I'll do my best to answer as many of them as I can. I can't guarantee you it'll be, now or tomorrow, but I will try if I can to answer them for you. Thank you for joining me. And if you have time to give us some feedback, that would be awesome. Thank you.